All right. First, let's analyze the firm of one. A man takes resources from society in some way. Perhaps he had already produced for society and so has accumulated some value tokens, typically in the form of money, for doing so, for getting resources, and then decides to exchange these value tokens for resources. Perhaps he doesn't have enough or even any value tokens and so has to get a loan. However he does it, he then gets resources from society. The man then, through his labor, transforms these resources into something else, perhaps taking wood and all the various sealants or whatever to make chairs. This man then takes these chairs and gives them to society in exchange for value tokens again. The value of the resources the man got from society are determined by society's aggregate subjective valuations of those resources. For example, the price of wood at a specific location is determined by society's aggregate subjective valuation of wood at that specific location. The value of the chairs he produces at the location he produces are also determined by the society's aggregate valuations of chairs at that time and place. If the value of the chairs he produces are more valuable according to society than the value of the resources that went into making the chairs, he will probably earn a profit. Labor is just another resource. The capitalist takes the labor of others, just like he takes wood, and through his labor, the labor of the capitalist, which in modern firms is typically no longer physical, he then these resources are transformed into a product. If society values the product more than the resources that went into making the product, the capitalist will probably earn a profit. At first glance, it may appear that while this could be considered fair, or at least not necessarily unfair, just, ceteris paribus, before even, we can get into some ways why something would be, quote, unfair, close quote, but just at this glance, this may be considered fair. But it doesn't get us anywhere, right? Because all of the surplus value apparently goes to the capitalist in the form of profit. It appears this way. Now, this is where marginal utility becomes very important. And this is why Marxism is at odds with marginal utility. Whenever you buy something, you value that thing more than anything else for that money that you know of. This may seem a bit bold to say, but let me explain that. If you spend $2 on a soda at a 7-Eleven, while 3 miles away there was a store that sells the same soda for $1, and you are aware of the existence of that store and the $1 soda, you are still spending your money on what you know that you value most at that time. Each unit of money that you value most at that time. A soda from the location of that 7-Eleven. Right? You're paying for the location. If you spend $2 on a soda at a 7-Eleven, this means you value that more than $2 before you bought it. Now you may end up buying it and go, I really didn't really want this. You may do that, but prior to the exchange, you valued the soda more than $2. Rational doesn't mean correct. Also, just as an aside, the existence of land means that all firms will be quasi-monopolistic, right? Because while 7-Eleven doesn't have a monopoly on soda, they have a monopoly on soda at that specific location, and this is just a fact of reality. That is, land is limited, and so all firms will be quasi-monopolistic because of the existence of land. Now, of course, this applies to the state many times over, but I don't want to get into that, right? And so it doesn't justify taxation because it applies to the state even more. Anyway, I'm not going to explain that because that's not the point of this video. Now, if we assume, however, that across the board people value the things they buy more than the resources used to buy them, then we can see surplus value on the consumer side. And for different consumers, the surplus value is different. The consumer surplus is different. Let's imagine a monopoly firm. A monopoly firm, like any firm, will try to find the price where he gets the most profit. This won't be as much as a complete newbie might think, because if he charges $100 per soda, and in 2010 dollars for those of you in the future, if he charges $100 per soda, so few people will buy from him that it won't make much money at all. And he'll have so few customers, he won't make much money. And so a monopolist will charge higher prices up to the point where charging any more would result in him losing so many customers that he actually starts to lose money from charging any higher. And so let's say $5 per soda is where he makes the most money. Even if he charges $5 per soda, each consumer who chooses to buy values the soda more than $5. And so even in a monopoly, the consumers of society are getting some surplus value. And because of this fact, if a population has never experienced anything but monopoly, they tend not to mind it. An example to illustrate this would be the U.S. Post Office. If the state grants itself a monopoly on mail, the population generally believes that only the state can deliver mail, and they will put up with high prices and shoddy service because it is better than what they believe is the alternative, no mail at all. Right? Similar to how they put up with state law, because they believe the alternative is no law at all. And so even this horrible state program is providing consumer surplus, as much as it pains for me to say it. But as the population learns that it need not be this way, there become moves to allow competition. But these moves are always problematic because the competition is usually legally limited as well, and the state firm has certain legal advantages. Right? An example would be the ability to deliver certain types of mail, or it could be just the privatization of a state firm, but of course this private firm still retains all of the legal advantages of the state firm. It's just no longer encumbered by controls by the state, right? And so it ends up just being a predator firm, which I contend would not come about on a completely free market. Anyway, this monopoly on mail would be an example of a non-coercive monopoly. That is, you are not required to use the monopoly service or pay for the monopoly service. Of course, the monopoly status of the service is sustained by coercion, but, let me just say, by violence, but you are not required to pay for it. So even though they're the only game in town, you still have the option of not having mail at all. This is different from most state programs, which are coercive monopolies. You don't even have the option of not paying. And so they can charge lousy prices right up to the point of revolution, which is, of course, exactly what they do. They can charge $100 per soda, force you to pay for it, although in a metaphorical sense. Although $100 per soda and forcing you to pay for it, that may set off a revolution. Right? So it's not up to the point where they, as a monopoly, they earn the most profit from people voluntarily choosing to buy the monopoly service. They can force you to pay, and they can charge way up. Say, for example, if they had a monopoly on soda and they forced you to pay for it, they may be able to charge up to $30 or $40 before they would set off a revolution. And so that's the revolution rate, or you could call it the coercive monopoly rate, as opposed to the non-coercive monopoly rate. Now back to the firm in general. Let's say Bob really values soda, and so he's willing to spend at most $10 per soda. Jim is only willing to spend $9, Bob $8, Jake $7, and all down to $0, and to people who you would actually have to pay to drink soda. At $10, lots of people are willing to produce soda, but there aren't many people willing to buy at that price. At $9, a few less are willing to produce, but still quite a few are willing to produce at $9, and a few more are willing to buy. Same trend at $8, $7, till you get to $0, where only a few amateur breweries are willing to produce for free, or maybe some political organizations that give away soda with some political message attached. Right? So all this can be explained by economics. This is economic reductionism. At any rate, the intersection is where the going price of soda occurs, sort of. Obviously, different sodas cost different amounts, so this model isn't perfect, and more expensive soda is competing with cheaper soda. If the more expensive soda isn't good enough to justify the higher cost, people may start buying cheaper soda or no soda at all. But anyway, what's important is that profit is not parasitical, and the surplus value is split between the capitalist and the consumer. And the more competition in the market there is, the more this split favors the consumer. This is why firms love regulation and various state controls to keep out competition so they can form cartels, have higher profits, which causes the split between consumer and producer surplus to go more the producer way. But this formation of cartels and stuff, that's the topic of another video. Well, that's the topic of videos I've already made. So go watch my videos and go read my book. It's great stuff. You ought to do that. Ought in a colloquial sense.